He's a triple S legendary hero, so why are his stats so freaking low? His skills are F and D rank, and worst of all, he's about to fight not against the demons, but actually he's fighting for the Demon Queen. He doesn't have much time to think about it, so he rushes towards the general, who tries to stop him with a vertical slash that gets dodged, and the fist connects to the monster's face. Another one to the plexus, but the creature tries to retaliate, but our boy dashes backward and sees that this albino ugly pig is somewhat intact. Then the monster decides to take the lead, and that's exactly what this boy was waiting for. Because using that monster weight with the technique that the demon commander taught him, he can do that. He anticipates the creature stepping forward and delivers a bazooka to its belly, sinking his hand deep into the ribs and activating the instant devastation. The Saintus in the grandstand couldn't understand how was that possible. The pig's body hits the floor with a crater on his chest. The boy raises his arm, and from the sidelines, the Demon Queen is surprised on how stronger the legendary hero had become in just 2 months. Even though he was working for her, he evolving in a rate that is extremely dangerous for all demons. But how the legendary SS hero ended up working for the demons? See, in his past life, his name was Choi, an MMA fighter on the rise. He came up from nothing. No rich gym or famous coach, just a dude with too much rage that loved fighting. And finally, he had a championship belt fight booked for the next month, the biggest payday of his life, enough money to finally get his sister out of debt and move his mom into a real apartment. But he never made it to the fight. On the way home from training, the inescapable acquired another frag to its unstoppable kill streak. Everything faded to black. He opens his eyes in a strange space, when suddenly from a portal an angel with hanging bombs appeared, making this dumbass face. She tells him he's dead. Her name is Rahil, who then says she's looking for people who died on Earth. Seeing all the talent radiating from her, he gets curious and approaches, blushing, asking for more details. But she cuts him off and says he has 2 choices. He can accept death and reincarnate as a loser, or he can be transported to another world and live a perfect life as a plumber, unclogging holes here and there. An incredible SS rank hero. He's no fool though, and knows something's off, so he replies that he needs some time to think. She, however, keeps insisting, saying this is the opportunity of a lifetime, and starts rambling about a whole bunch of things. The protagonist knows there must be something wrong since the offer was way too good. He just died after being a fighter, and maybe reincarnating into a peaceful life would be better. She tells him to focus though, since he didn't get it. She's going to explain it properly. He'll be born in a peaceful village, complete an extremely easy quest, and then the village lord will offer him the most beautiful girl, who is his daughter, so he can marry her. The protagonist is clearly looking at her suspiciously, while Rahel wonders why he isn't reacting. At that, she decides to change her mind and turns away, saying that since he doesn't want to marry a wonderful woman, she's leaving and he can just reincarnate. He then tells her to wait, and at that she warns him that if he doesn't accept this offer, he might not even reincarnate as a human in his next life. Hearing this, he grabs her foot and says it's fine. He accepts. She tells him to repeat it, and he then begs, saying he wants to be that hero who gets born and ends up with the village guy's daughter. At that, she smiles and says they're going to start right now. The kid is confused. Wait, right this instant? And she says there's no reason for them to just stand around waiting. At that, he tells her to explain more instead of sending him off with no preparation. But it's too late. The magic circle makes him vanish, and she tells the team of angels that he was successfully transported. Meanwhile, the protagonist lost consciousness and woke up to someone telling him to open his eyes. He wondered if this was the village chief Rahul had talked about, the one with the beautiful daughter. For a second, it seemed like things were going as promised, until a punch slammed into his stomach and snapped him fully awake. Annoyed, Hyosok snapped back, asking if that guy had a death wish, but stopped halfway through. The one in front of him wasn't human. It wore a horned wild boar skull, and angrily accused MC of slacking off in the slave dorm. Completely lost, he hesitated. Was this weird thing really the village chief Rahul meant? No way. It looked more like the kind of monster a hero should fight. Carefully, he introduced himself as a hero. The creature just looked confused, came closer, and mocked how stupid heroes were these days. Now Hyosok started to think something had gone very wrong, but he still wanted to believe Rahel hadn't tricked him. Maybe this monster was just his first mission. Trying to stay cool, he chose to act first. But before he could think any further, the creature asked what he had just said. Without waiting, Hyosok kicked it and yelled for it to die. He was proud of that kick for about a second, until the creature caught his foot. Smirking, it asked if he really thought he was a hero. In an exhausted voice, it complained about all these fake heroes and wondered why they kept showing up. The protagonist couldn't move as the creature clenched its fist and sneered that a beating would fix him right up. As Hyosok got used to the dark room, loud banging echoed outside. Someone yelled for the door to open, demanding another fight with the cow-headed monster. The door opened and an angry goblin with a sword appeared. It shouted at the loud prisoner, threatening to boil him into soup if he didn't shut up. Terrified, MC quickly promised to stay quiet. Once the goblin left, he started grumbling about this so-called beautiful fantasy world. He wondered where it had all gone wrong. More than anything, he feared dying a virgin again. Then a voice called to him through a small window in the cell. Hyosok asked who it was, and the man introduced himself as a senior hero who was about to begin his own journey. He explained that they were trapped in a fortress of the Demon King's army, where humans were used as slaves. Looking through the window, he was shocked to find another Korean. He respectfully called him Sunbai, and asked how they ended up like this. Amused by his manners, the The man teased him, then shouted to the other prisoners, asking if the self-proclaimed heroes were still alive. Voices answered from all around, all claiming to be heroes. The place was full of unlucky people who had met the same fate. Stunned, Hyunsuk asked what was going on. The Sunbae casually said there were at least 100 heroes trapped in the Demon King's fortress. He explained that the red cow-headed creature the protagonist met earlier was Reed Run, the fortress chief. The goblin who threatened him was Jark, a prison guard known for being especially cruel. Then he revealed why they were all there. It was because of Rahel, the so-called angel. MC could only stare as the man cursed her, calling her a devil in disguise. Bitterly, he said everything would have been different if not for her mistake. Starting to panic, Hyunsuk demanded the truth. Weren't heroes supposed to begin somewhere better than this nightmare? The man said yes. Heroes captured elsewhere had told him what normal starting points were like. Usually heroes begin in a city or a village, even if they have no powers yet. That made everything clear to him. The reason he had landed in this hell was Rahel. He could still picture her face clearly. A few days later, we see the 2nd Slave Squad of the 3rd Battalion in the Demon King's army. Humans were forced to work under brutal conditions while goblins watched them, and they were even made to chant, "Crush the humans! Eat the humans!" Hyunsuk trembled from exhaustion as he carried a huge log with a goblin riding on top. At last, a bell rang to end the workday, and they were sent back to their cells. Back in his cell, the protagonist thought prison almost felt better than the labor outside. Then he remembered Rahel's promise about special hero privileges, so he decided to try the classic command, status window. To his surprise, it actually worked, and his stats appeared in front of him. Looking them over, he learned the basics of his strength and abilities. Hyunsuk muttered about what he saw, and the man in the next cell heard him. That man was shocked to learn MC already had level 1 stamina. He confirmed it and added that his strength stat was 28. Remembering his past as a champion, the man was impressed. He hadn't expected the protagonist to be this gifted, especially with stats over 30 at level 1. The protagonist brushed it off, saying he was still just a slave, but the man stayed hopeful. He told Hyunsuk that with talent like that, he could escape and become a real hero. MC didn't buy it and pretended to sleep. In truth, he kept thinking about how low his level was and whether it could help him escape at all. Later, when the other man finally fell asleep, he quietly got up and opened the status window again. This time, 2 things stood out: mana, which could give superhuman power, and hero points. The protagonist realized the other heroes didn't seem to know about hero points since nobody had ever earned any. Then a familiar light appeared and the angel showed up again, proudly showing off her looks. With a teasing smile and a playful pout, she greeted him like they hadn't seen each other in forever. Then Rahel provocatively asked if he wanted her to reveal some key info about hero points. But before she could finish, Hyunsuk snatched the tiny Rahel out of the air, glaring at her in anger. He flat out told her he didn't care about hero points or anything else she wanted to say. Right now, all he wanted was to tell her off. A moment later, Rahel ended up tied up and hanging like fishing bait. Trying to smooth things over, she said the summoning circles messed up because someone spilled coffee during snack time. While she talked, she put up soundproof magic so no one would hear them. MC then asked if this assignment was her punishment. Rahel said no, she'd been sent to act as his personal fairy, a guide who had to help him until he killed the Demon King. Hyunsuk made it clear he didn't care about being a hero anymore, and Rahel asked what he meant. He said he had zero interest in defeating the Demon King. He just wanted a normal life. Rahel admitted plenty of chosen heroes felt that way at first, but she reminded him that his potential was SS rank. He shot back that having talent didn't mean he owed anyone anything. He never believed this was his fate to begin with. Rahel tried to argue, but he cut her off. He was done with a life of non-stop fighting like the one he used to have. That caught Rahel off guard. She'd always thought he was just a dumb fighter obsessed with battles and women, and now she started worrying about what would happen to her. When Rahel first got assigned as a personal fairy, she had protested hard. To her, it was insulting for someone of her standing to be stuck in such a humiliating job. But the order was final. She had to stay with Hyunsuk until the Demon King was defeated. They told her a personal fairy had to fully support their assigned warrior and share in both the wins and the losses. No matter how much she complained, she was sent straight to the demon fortress. Back in the present, the protagonist figured out that a personal fairy had to follow her warrior's orders, so he told Rahel to help with his escape plan, and she reluctantly agreed. Then a noise came from the door, and Hyunsuk quickly grabbed Rahel to hide her. The goblins were up, waking the prisoners for another day of labor. Rahel grumbled that she could have hidden herself with stealth magic. Even after roll call ended, MC saw that Jark, the cruel goblin guard, was still standing by his cell. Jark told him Red Run wanted to see him in the office. When he got there, Red Run brought up something unexpected. He had been working hard lately. He was stunned while Jark sat on Red Run's shoulders like usual. He could hardly believe that stinking goblin was actually praising him. Red Run admitted he first thought Hyunsuk was just another crazy human, but his recent attitude had changed that. So Red Run offered him a new role, head slave. The protagonist had no clue what he was getting at. Red Run explained that work had been slowing down, so they needed someone to manage the humans. Rahel desperately hoped MC would reject it on the spot. She kept whispering at him to say no, then flat out yelled that a hero should never bow to officers in the Demon King's army. Both Red Run and the Jark heard her and asked what that noise was. Thinking fast, Yuan Sok shouted that he'd take care of everything and make the humans work harder to sell it. He bowed so hard his forehead slammed into the desk. Redrun loved it. He even admitted he was starting to like him after all. He went further and promised a special recommendation to join the Demon King's army if the protagonist kept doing well. MC was dismissed, but inside he felt miserable. His escape plans seemed to be falling apart. A few days later, the humans were working while chanting, and Hyun Sok strutted around like a boss, snapping at one worker for moving too slowly. He mocked him, saying even his grandma could move faster. With the way he acted, he looked right at home in the Demon King's army. Then the system popped up and showed that his hidden skill, charisma, had gone up. Thanks to his experience as a leader, he blurted out that being head slave was amazing. The other prisoners traded nervous looks, sure he'd finally gone crazy. They started whispering about him behind his back. Rahel, though, scolded him and warned this could get them into huge trouble. Hyun Sok brushed it off and told her to trust the plan. Then he smugly added that a sparrow like her couldn't understand a phoenix like him. When one man dropped to his knees, the protagonist tore into him. Then the system informed him that Redrun's favorability had increased. MC gave a dramatic salute and thanked Redrun, loudly swearing his loyalty. Raphael finally blew up, reminding him he was supposed to escape and chase freedom. Scratching his head, Hyun Sok awkwardly explained that he was just following the system. If he was a hero, then obeying the system made sense. Raphael fired back, saying it was ridiculous for a hero quest to involve raising favorability with an officer in the Demon King's army. He insisted he was telling the truth and even offered to read the quest out loud. It started. You who ended up trapped in the Demon King's fortress because of an idiot's mistake, and Rahel cut him off. She argued that no real system message would sound that casual, since they were supposed to be neutral and exact. The protagonist just shrugged and said maybe an SS rank hero system worked differently. The night before, Rahel had gone wild after seeing how easily MC accepted the head slave job. He snapped back that she was the crazy one. Then, out of nowhere, a system message appeared for him. It said, you trapped in the Demon King's fortress because of an idiot's mistake, probably feel as annoyed as finding an empty toilet paper roll. But this is also a chance to become a true hero. Gain the favor of the Demon King's officer, Redrun, and earn 100 hero points. Hyun Sok had been shocked, but he realized this was his only real path forward. So now, while the slaves worked, he had them sing the Demon King's 3rd Army Corps song. Rahel was confused, because only very high-ranking beings could change quest objectives. She couldn't figure out why anyone would do that for him. Then Jark showed up again and told Hyun Sok to come with him to Redrun's office. Redrun praised him for raising the slaves' productivity so much, pretending to be humble. The protagonist said it was all thanks to Redrun's wise leadership. Rahel scoffed, sure that kind of cheap praise would never work. But then, to her surprise, Redrun clearly loved it. The system appeared again and announced that Hyun Sok had reached the goal and cleared the hero quest. He got 100 hero points and unlocked the beginner hero store. Both of them were shocked that his plan worked that well. Now that the favorability quest was done and things were moving smoothly, MC decided it was time for step 2. He asked Redrun for permission to start training the slaves. Redrun questioned why. Hyun Sok pitched the idea fast, disciplined slaves working together perfectly, each one doing the work of 3 without slacking off. He said that with that kind of efficiency, they could finish the fortress in just a week. Redrun argued that humans were too weak to train and keep working at the same time. He didn't back down. He added that if it worked, even the commander would praise Redrun. That was enough, and Redrun approved the training. Back in the cell, Rahel was in full despair. She cried that her hero had completely lost it, first serving the Demon King's army and now training slaves for them too. Annoyed by all the drama, the protagonist told her to be quiet and said he already had a plan. Rahel, still doubtful, asked if he was fooling her again. Hyun Sok shot back by asking if she thought he was like her. Then he revealed the real plan: use the slaves to start a rebellion. There were about 3,000 human slaves in the fortress, but only around 500 demon soldiers. And nearby there was a base from the Human Alliance. Once the revolt started, they could call for help. Hearing that, Rahel's despair turned into admiration. She admitted he wasn't as dumb as she'd thought. Next, Hyun Sok decided to check the quest rewards. Rahel, still suspicious, asked if he had really gotten hero points or if the whole thing was fake. MC told her it was all real. He said the hero store had unlocked, and he opened it to see what was inside. He went in hoping to find something useful. Maybe the thing that would finally give him a real hero skill. But when the store list appeared, he was stunned. The skills included Hold Your Breath, an F-rank skill for better breath control, and Shit Holding, which let you endure needing the bathroom longer. Hyun Sok sarcastically said that one should have been SS rank, especially in public emergencies. The rest were things like cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Confused and mad, the protagonist asked how any of that was fit for a hero. Laughing at him, Rahel explained the store was only level 1. She said if he earned more points and leveled it up, better options would show up later. Still angry, MC yelled at Rahel to shut up and called her a scam fairy. The next day, the slaves saluted the Demon King while Hyun Sok ordered them to sing the 3rd Army Corps song. At his signal, they began, "We, the great Demon King army, defeat humans, eat humans, forget your pain when you catch them. Nothing under the sky compares to the Demon King's love." Redron watched the performance, pleased that letting him train the slaves had paid off. Then the office door burst open and Jark rushed in with urgent news. The human army was moving toward the fortress. The 8th Division, the biggest unit nearby, had already been trapped and forced to retreat. If even the 8th Division had lost, Jark warned, then it was only a matter of time before the humans reached the fortress. Even so, Raidhol stayed calm. He acknowledged Jark's idea to evacuate, but told him to wait. According to Raidhol, wars had always been decided by supply lines, and the first rule of war, he said, was never to lose a good supply officer. So he told Jark to go ahead while he dealt with Hyunsuk first. Meanwhile, the protagonist barked at the slaves, asking if they were ready to follow his orders. Then he heard the noise and sighed, guessing Redron was about to interrupt their training again. Looking at his status window, Spee saw his stats had gone up a little, but nowhere near enough to start a revolt. Under his breath, he wished for some lucky event that could make him stronger fast. Before he could finish that thought, Redron dropped down next to him and slapped a hand on his shoulder, startling him. Hyunsuk spun around. Redron looked rushed. "No time," he said. His voice was urgent. "Come with me now." He asked where and why, but Redron didn't answer. At that exact moment, the human commander roared for his men to attack. Convinced victory was close, spear-wielding soldiers rushed in, cutting down several goblins as they advanced. But then they froze at the sight of the Red Nightmare. "Redrun." The commander immediately yelled for a retreat and ordered the knights to take over. Even so, the troops kept charging, carried away by their momentum. Watching the confusion, Hyunsuk started thinking, why were human soldiers here? Maybe he could use this, stab the Demon King's commander in the back and go back to human society as a hero. Then one of the soldiers screamed, "Die, Red Nightmare," and charged Redrun. Redrun calmly grabbed the man by the head and crushed it. The protagonist went stiff in shock. Then Redrun used his martial art, the 7th movement. He smashed the soldier's face into the ground and followed with a wide-area strike, the explosive destruction wave. The earth burst apart, blasting human soldiers into the air. After that, Redrun looked back at Hyunsuk. "You okay?" MC saluted on instinct, said he was fine, and quietly added that he'd be leaving soon. That was when he remembered who he was standing beside, one of the Demon King army's strongest fighters. The humans soon took control of the area, planted 2 flags and started sorting the people from Marriott Kingdom and the Drasen Empire. One soldier asked Hyunsuk's cellmate if they were warriors, and the man said yes. Those labeled warriors were split off from the other captives and taken elsewhere. Then someone came to meet them, Olivan Grimir, a red-haired, bearded duke of the Drasen Empire and leader of the allied army. A soldier reported that the evacuation was complete, and Olivan praised him. The soldier also said the people claiming to be warriors had been drafted. Olivan then gave the signal to begin. "All soldiers to your posts." A moment later, he gave an even colder order. "Wipe out every warrior in front of us." Meanwhile, a carriage moved through the forest. Inside, Hyunsuk sat there in silence, saying goodbye to his dreams of adventure and his fantasy second life. Across from him, Redrun sat quietly. The protagonist kept thinking about how easily Redrun had killed everyone chasing them. At least pursuit was no longer a problem. Trying to lift his mood, Rahel said crises often create chances. She suggested going to headquarters first and figuring out the Demon King army's situation. MC, annoyed, told her to shut up. Then, breaking the silence, Redrun said, "I must have dozed off for a second." He looked over and asked, "Did you say something?" Hyunsuk quickly covered, saying he was just mumbling about how honored he was to travel with someone like Redrun. Redrun seemed pleased. He said they were close to 3 Corps headquarters and told him he should look forward to it. "Once we get there, I'll officially enlist you in the Demon King's army." The protagonist turned pale but forced out, "It's an honor." Even Rahel panicked in silence. At headquarters, a guard announced Redrun's return, and the gate opened at once. Redrun signaled for MC to follow, saying he would take him straight to the commander. He called it a huge honor to meet the commander so soon, though his posture suggested otherwise. Then he warned Hyunsuk to watch every word in front of the commander if he wanted to stay alive. Remembering the saying about surviving, even in a tiger's den if you keep your head, he braced himself and swore he wouldn't break. At the commander's door, Redrun announced himself and was allowed in. As the door opened, Hyunsuk heard a woman's voice and wondered if the commander might actually look human. The person before them was stunning, a woman with long ears, clawed nails, hidden eyes, and strange coloring along her jaw and neck. She sat back in her chair in high heels, giving off total authority. "Welcome back, Redrun," she said with a smile, adding that he looked even more muscular than before. This was Hemis, commander of the Demon King Army's 3rd Corps. Redrun answered with a compliment of his own, saying her beauty had grown even more dazzling. The protagonist's face heated up. He couldn't believe someone this beautiful was a corps commander. Hemis thanked Redrun with a smile, while the protagonist panicked inside, wondering if he should praise her too. Before he could decide, Redrun changed the subject. He admitted he was ashamed. He hadn't protected the fortress, but Hemis brushed that aside. "The real blame," she said, "belonged to the 8th Division commander, not Redrun." In a colder voice, she added that she should have already turned that man's hide into a bag. MC nearly stopped breathing. Hemis went on saying the 8th Division commander had come back alive, but only as a disgrace. The pressure coming off her was far worse than anything MC had ever felt. He clenched his fists and tried to hide the shaking. Then changing topics, Hemis looked at the human Reedrun had brought. Reedrun introduced him as him, the person from his earlier report, and said he had brought him here to formally join the Demon King's army. Hemis stepped closer to look him over. "He's cute," she said lightly, adding that she expected a lot from someone picked by Reedrun. Flustered, Hyunsuk said he'd do his best. Hemis just looked him over and said that with a body like his, he wouldn't last long in the demon army. She asked Reedrun if he agreed, and he nodded. The others will eat him alive. He then pointed out how rare a human recruit was and asked permission to train the protagonist himself. Hemis shut that down right away. Absolutely not, Reedrun's time was too valuable to waste on a human. Then something shocking happened. Hemis started changing. Her head twisted into something like a flower, but a flower full of teeth and a long tongue. Hyunsuk stared in disbelief as she shoved her arm into her own mouth. A moment later, her face returned to normal, and she was holding a small black dog-like creature. She told MC his new job was to take care of her pet. The little beast looked tiny but dangerous. "This is Babo," Hemis said fondly. "Isn't he adorable?" Inside, he could only wonder what kind of pet this was supposed to be. To him, it looked like something straight out of hell. And in his own language, the name Babo also meant stupid, which only made this weirder. Reedrun looked at the creature and said he could feel huge power from it, even in this form. Hemis was clearly happy to hear that. Hyunsuk still looked doubtful, and Hemis noticed at once. Her voice turned sharper. "Don't you like it?" she asked, pressing him harder. The protagonist quickly backtracked. "It's an honor to care for Bobo." Satisfied, Hemis handed Bobo over. She warned him not to forget feeding time since Bobo was still growing and got nasty when hungry. She also mentioned it had become hard to find new caretakers because Bobo kept eating them. Rahel suddenly shouted, shocking everyone. A new hero quest had appeared in the system, and she couldn't hide her surprise. MC instantly shushed her, afraid she'd wake Bobo. The quest popped up. Survive by earning Bobo's affection and secure a better future. Reward 200 hero points. Hyunsuk was speechless. Was he seriously being told to win over a commander's pet? Just then the door opened and a goblin came in, tapping on the frame. He greeted it politely, but inside, he felt uneasy. Having a goblin as a partner made him feel less like staff and more like pet food. When he asked about the previous caretakers, the goblin bluntly said there weren't any. They were all dead. That answer made it clear enough. Still, he asked about the job, and the goblin said their role was to prepare Bobo's meals. "So that's it?" Hyunsuk asked. "Yes," the goblin said, but before it could add anything else, a shadow fell over it. Bobo was right there, licking the goblin's head. Panicking, the goblin grabbed onto Hyunsuk's leg and begged for help, even offering him its food if he would save it. The protagonist finally snapped. "What are you doing?" he yelled. The goblin ignored him, clearly convinced one of them was about to die. Enraged, MC grabbed the goblin and threw it at Bobo. "You're the one dying," he said, and as Bobo got ready to pounce, he offered up the snack. Bobo loved it, and ate the goblin without hesitation. The protagonist and Rahel could only watch as Bobo happily enjoyed the meal. Later, Rahel was the one running for her life, with Bobo chasing right behind. She screamed for help, but Song casually replied, "Don't run too long, he'll get hungry again." Then MC noticed a new item in the shop, an extra-large bone. It could lure canine-type monsters and make them friendly, and it cost 30 hero points. He acted fast, called Bobo over, and showed him the bone. The moment he threw it, Bobo's eyes lit up and he sprinted after it. Meanwhile, Rahel, worn out from all that flying, complained that he should have found it sooner. Smugly, Hyunsuk answered, "That's because my brain catches the little things." He thought the quest would be easy after that, but he was wrong. Bobo suddenly lunged at him, barely missing and ripping only the edge of his shirt. That's when he realized it. The bone alone wasn't enough. Bobo wanted fresh meat. Rahel asked if he was really thinking about taking Bobo outside. Hyunsuk hesitated, feeling the pressure build as Bobo showed his teeth. In a panic, the first soothing word that came to the protagonist's mind slipped out. "Walk." Bobo stopped instantly. The savage look disappeared, replaced by excited tail-wagging joy. He even hugged MC, who let out a relieved sigh. Once outside, Hyunsuk tried to find the kitchen, but he had no idea where he was going, and Bobo kept dragging him all over the place. Rahel looked around and admitted she couldn't smell any food. Then she noticed a goblin, and said they should ask for directions. He walked over and the goblin looked confused to see a human there, but Bobo suddenly slipped back into his wild mode. The goblin went stiff with fear. Hyunsuk tried to calm him down, saying Bobo was only out for a walk, but the goblin still looked terrified. He asked why a human was walking Bobo. When Bobo licked his face, the protagonist quickly stepped in. "Don't eat him." Then he asked where the kitchen was. Shaking all over, the goblin pointed left and ran for his life. Ral and MC watched him go too, stunned at first, then they burst out laughing. The goblin had panicked so hard that they started wondering how someone like that ended up in the demon army. Once they calmed down, Hyunsuk focused again. He still needed meat from the kitchen. Ral asked what his real plan was. Was he going to look after a dog forever? He snorted and said no. He still had bigger dreams. Then he turned around and Bobo was gone. Panic hit right away. His face went white. Where the hell is that dog? Hyunsuk felt dread sink in. Bobo was pure trouble, and looking away for even a second had been a huge mistake. Raoul looked around and pointed ahead. Over there, Bobo was trotting back to them. The protagonist let out a breath and snapped, "You scared me half to death." Bobo came back looking pleased, but there was blood on his mouth and his belly was already full. Then shouting broke out. Commander Regis was dead, and someone swore revenge. Hai Sang-sok froze. Raoul pointed at Bobo and whispered that he did it. Goblin soldiers rushed in, and both of them ran. Between breaths, Raoul asked if they were about to die. MC shot back, "Shut up and run." They hit a dead end and got surrounded by yelling goblins. One shouted that he'd rip his arms off like chicken wings. Another complained that the commander was already digested and wondered what he would have tasted like. A third said they should tear both Hyun-sik and Bobo apart and split the meat. The protagonist forced himself to stay steady and yelled back, "How dare you?" He was badly outnumbered, so he needed something fast. He picked up Bobo and asked if they even knew who this fearless one was. Confused, the goblins just stared, thinking Bobo was some stray monster. Hearing that, Hyun-sik got angry and tore into them. He announced that this cute but deadly beast was Bobo himself. The goblins hesitated. They'd heard Bobo was Commander Himis's pet, but they figured this was just another human trick. Even so, a few started to think he might be telling the truth. MC asked how they could fail to recognize Bobo and called it embarrassing. The goblins were thrown off by how sure he sounded. Without losing his cool, he told Bobo to show them beast mode. Bobo obeyed at once, turning feral, drool hanging from his mouth like he was ready to eat. Hyun-sik looked at the goblins and said again, "This is Bobo." Then he gave the order, "Bite him." Bobo roared and leaped at the nearest goblin. Blood flew as Bobo tore into him. He watched and casually said, "A dog without a muzzle really makes a mess." By the time Bobo finished, only bones were left. The protagonist faced the others and mocked them. "Anyone still doubt who Bobo is?" The goblins instantly apologized, saying they hadn't realized it was really him. Just then, a system message popped up for MC. It said his crazy charisma had cowed a bunch of demons and raised his hidden charisma stat. He grinned, happy to see it. Then a voice behind him cut in, calm but commanding, asking what all the noise was about. It was Commander Himis. She looked over the scene with amusement and joked that the cute new pet was making quite a scene outside. Hyun-sok's blood ran cold. Meeting her in the office had already been stressful. Facing her here felt even worse. Himis laughed, clearly amused that the protagonist had used her name and Bobo to stay alive. MC bowed low and admitted he committed a serious offense. Himis only raised a brow, confused because she'd actually meant to praise him. She liked how quick and clever he was, especially compared to the demons around her. He had guts too, she added with a smirk. Himis awkwardly thanked her, still unsure whether this was real praise or a hidden warning. Himis went on, saying the demon army leaned too much on brute force, which always led to pointless trouble. When he asked what kind of trouble, she only said he'd find out soon. Then she changed the subject and told him to think about becoming an executive in the demon army. Himis was stunned and felt nowhere near qualified, but Himis brushed that aside. He couldn't keep hiding behind her name and Bobo forever, she said. She explained that the army used ranked duels, and the winner could take the loser's position. Himis gave him 1 month to get ready for a fight. If he won, she'd protect him for 1 more month. If he kept winning, he might even rise to battalion commander and become useful. Himis nervously asked what happened if he lost. Himis answered coldly. He'd regret surviving that battle. The meaning was clear, losing would be worse than dying. With no real choice, the protagonist accepted, and Himis even picked his opponent right there. Rahel let out a long sigh and said she'd probably be saying goodbye to him in a month. Memsi shot her a glare and reminded her she was the one who said he had SS rank potential. Rahel shrugged and said potential only meant maybe, not for sure. Hyun-sok snapped that she was a fairy and still couldn't be supportive. As he fumed, he noticed the doors ahead were smeared with blood and wondered if this really was the kitchen. Carefully, he pushed the doors open. Inside, a huge red-skinned demon greeted him. He introduced himself as Kulkin, the demon army's chef, and asked why he had come. The protagonist stayed by the doorway and said he only wanted a snack for Bobo. Kulkin narrowed his eyes, realizing Bobo had another new caretaker, but he flat-out refused, leaving Hyun-sok speechless. Kulkin said he had no reason to help a human. Commander Himis had only ordered him not to kill MC. Desperate, he asked if there was any way to work something out, stressing that the food was for Bobo. After thinking it over, Kulkin offered one answer. If the protagonist really wanted meat, he'd have to hunt it himself, just like the goblins. Himis went pale and glanced at the goblins, who were chopping up meat that looked way too much like other goblins. Right then, he realized Kulkin's idea of hunting was much worse than he'd imagined. Before long, MC was standing in front of a giant wild boar. They told him this beast would be dinner if he managed to kill it, and he could only wonder how his life had turned into this mess. The same boar had already killed Morgan. They called it a hunt, but really the thing just kept charging at everyone, and the cooks swore they'd avenge Morgan. Watching the chaos, Himis joked that it was hard to tell who'd end up as dinner. Rahel, being practical, asked what they should do next and even suggested running. He shook his head. There was no way they could escape a crowd that big, and he knew how bad things looked. He was about to move when Kulkin called out. The protagonist thought he was being sent next and answered right away, but Kulkin surprised him by saying there was no need, the hunt was already over. Hyun-sok was stunned. He thought they'd just been charging like idiots, so how had they killed it that fast? A goblin reported the result to Culkin. 12 dead and many more hurt. To MC, that cost was insane, but Culkin didn't care. He called it a great outcome and announced a short break before the next hunt. He couldn't miss how little the chef cared about the dead. While the cooks got busy, the protagonist told Rahul there was no chance of escaping now. Rahul asked if that meant he planned to join the hunts. MC answered with a firm no. He had no reason to fight like that.